F is for Freeza. F is for fun. F is for F to anyone who gets in his way. Hey guys, MasakoX here. Happy Frieza Week, everyone. If you're not sure what I mean about Frieza Week, it's sort of like Shark Week on the Discovery Channel, only with Frieza this time. Although he technically is a shark, a land shark. Check out my video about that topic if you're not too sure, but this fact is relatively well known. The thing about Frieza is that even though he is quite straightforward, a space emperor who is sinister yet polite, albeit mockingly so, there are some aspects of his character which may not be as obvious as you might think to the typical viewer or reader of the manga. So, to commemorate our little experiment with themed weeks, harking back of sorts to our What If weeks from 2017 and such, we would like to celebrate everyone's favourite form-changing overlord, and just talk about some lesser known facts about the guy, as well of course his siblings, his father, and anyone associated with them. With Frieza, he is quite complex despite the simplistic nature of his premise within the series. Even though he is the one who destroyed the Saiyans all those years ago, his personality makes him someone who is more engaging and complex than your common villain in a show. He keeps you engaged whilst also scaring you and blowing up your planet. If you are deemed worthy though, he will treat you with respect, even if it's still a little bit degrading. However, what makes him even more nuanced is that he is now matured into something more and far more understanding and aware of what is going on around him, even to the point where he has finally appreciated the filthy monkey's strength despite wiping nearly all of them out. Oops, did I do that? There's a lot to unpack with this one clearly, which is why today we wish to share 8 facts about this guy that aren't as obvious as you might think. As always, of course, if you do copious amounts of research yourself or consider yourself to be a true devotee to the fandom, then you probably know a lot of the stuff that we're about to share with you, but we do endeavour to try our very best to impress, as well as hoping that we might be able to surprise you with at least one fact that you might not have known to make you do a double take in your chair. So without any further stalling on our part, here are some interesting lesser known tidbits about Frieza. Number 1, his manner of speech. Masako, we already know this. It's not exactly hard. Frieza can talk. Duh. And he talks a lot. And he also mostly, I know that, but you might not be aware of the details that go into the performance that might make it stand out from anything else that we got, like we got with Linda Young. So, for anyone who has had the pleasure to listen to his original voice, provided by Mr. Ryusei Nakao, you can obviously notice that Frieza has a very particular way of talking. It is quite effeminate, whilst also exuding oodles of dominance, assertiveness, and confidence. He is the one in charge in every room, and he will make sure everyone knows it, even if he likes you. Despite his sadistic nature, he is very cordial when it comes to conversations on an everyday basis. This is achieved in Japanese by using very specific honorifics called keigo, which are basically parts of speech that show respect very clearly. Their use is mandatory in many social situations within Japan. And this can be lost in translation because if you only listen to the English dub, you might naturally not have these translated in the manner they were originally meant to be conveyed, because, honorifics don't really work that way here. Honorifics in Japanese may be used to emphasize social distance or disparity in rank in one word. It's not necessarily a rank per se, it's more to emphasize social intimacy or similarity in status. And obviously, there are often much, much longer than casual conversations between friends, which would explain Frieza's tendencies to monologuing. The easiest comparison I could think would be kitei, which means okay to ask a question, and then this that Frieza might say, kikasete itadakeru to ureshii no desu ga, meaning I would, however, be delighted if I may be permitted to ask a question. You can hear Frieza say this clearly. This is quite a long-winded way to go about something you can say in 2 words in Japanese, but what it implies carries a lot of weight. It's a manner to show that they, whoever says it, are superior, intelligent, and you, if you cannot understand what they are trying to say, you are simple-minded. You are not worth their time because to them, what they are saying is pretty obvious. You don't even have to hear the actual words, just the intonation and the length of the words are enough to get it, hopefully. That, however, isn't the only interesting fact we have for you when it comes to Frieza speaking. As we mentioned, Frieza is voiced in the Japanese dub by Mr. Ryusei Nakao, but we didn't tell you that Number 2, almost every member of his race is voiced by the same person in the Japanese dub. That's right, he doesn't only voice Frieza, which is by far his most well-known performance, but he also brought to life the likes of Cooler, Chilled, and Frost in various episodes, movies, and series. The only member of his race that originated in animations who is not voiced by him is King Cold, as he was originally voiced by the late Daisuke Guri, with his current voice now being portrayed in future productions by Mr. Ryozuburo Otomon. He's also known for voicing Ox King and Deborah in DBZ. This is not the only interesting fact about his voice actors. As you probably know, currently the English dubbed Frieza is being voiced by 2 people. Chris Ayres primarily, and then his understudy Damon Mills, who's been filling in for Chris for the Fighters series of games. And actually who's someone that we've interviewed recently for our podcast Up on the Lookout, by the way, if you care to listen. But did you guys know that Frost is voiced by Chris's actual brother Greg Ayres? You might have recalled it in passing before, but the fact that in this English dub, they got brothers to play brother characters is something that is so deliberate. It, to me, is inspired. The members of Frieza's race have a somewhat iconic sound to them. It just makes that moment when Frost and Frieza are talking in the Tournament of Power all the more palpable. They are basically just going off on each other, and the fact they're brothers? Great, I love it. The members of Frieza's race have a somewhat iconic sound to them. You can't just stick a typical bad guy voice in there, not even a slightly mean British accent, or even a Rose Goku Black accent. It has to be its own thing, which has many interesting voices, such as Linda Young, despite it being a little too raspy and hamstrung sadly by censored dialogue. I would very much like to hear her voice doing uncensored talking. Or even the iconic Martin Little Karibo Billany, who you guys probably know as the voice of DBZA and now R&R Frieza. Number 3. The fight between Goku and Frieza was pretty long. And not just felt it. Yes, I know that some of you out there are about to type or say that, oh, this doesn't count, that this is nothing new for you. Fair enough. We all know about the whole 5 minutes joke, which has now become the joke about something which should take no time at all, but actually doesn't. But did you guys know that this encounter is not just limited to that one saga? It is not only the longest fight in Dragon Ball Z itself, 19 episodes of the anime so you know, but it's also often cited as the longest recorded fight in the entire franchise, clocking at roughly 3.5 hours of screen time from when Goku launched himself at Frieza to the moment when Frieza got called a fool. You could watch the Broly movie twice and Goku would still be decking Frieza in the schnoz. Number 4. How tall is he, really? This is quite possibly one of the most amusing factoids that we have seen from Frieza in recent years. We now have a little nod to the notion that he is quite short, and that he has some kind of awareness of said subject. He is very touchy about it, which culminated in one of the best jokes in the Broly movie. That parallel between himself and Bulma, it was perfect. While we all know what Frieza's wish on the Earth's Dragon Balls would have been, it is interesting to note how tall he would be in the real world. Well, surprisingly in his final form, he measures up to 158 centimeters, or 5'2" tall. And what's even more interesting is that even if his wish were to come true, he would still be shorter than Vegeta by just 1 centimeter. There is a very precise joke over here, but we won't spell it out for you. Also, in case you've wondered, Cooler, in his movie incarnation, is much taller, measuring up to about 6 foot tall, or 183 centimeters. So quite clearly, King Cold followed the technology school of thought, which is making things smaller, but more powerful. Number 5. Him losing his tail became somewhat of a running gag. We all know that the Saiyans have lost their tails over time, and sometimes it can grow back, depending on whether the plot needs it to happen or not. Frieza's loss count is far greater than any of the monkeys. So far, Frieza has lost his tail a total of 4 times, and you thought Goku had it bad with his monkey tail. The first time was against Krillin, who chopped it off with his Destructo Disc. Oh, Krillin. He should have gone for the head. The second time was when Goku's Spirit Bomb struck him and took a chunk out of his own body, surprisingly. The third, it happened with his own superpowered pizza, and the last time came from slamming Jiren into the arena with his own Nova Strike. Also, he gets sliced in half 3 times. Once by his pizza again, once by Trunks, and that one time in GT if we count that with Goku. So yeah, Frieza has been having some trouble keeping himself together. Number 6. We were supposed to see him au naturel in Resurrection F. Now let's get ourselves ready to go back to the Resurrection F movie, even though it's not exactly aged well. As everyone might know and have grown to assume, everyone that has played a Frieza race character in the Xenoverse games knows that Frieza's kind is very fond on wearing bio-armor. It's part of their exoskeleton these days. Sometimes it's hard to determine what is the actual part of their body or not. Where does that Saiyan-like armor begin and end? Well, it all starts to become quite confusing when we see Frieza being resurrected, or more accurately reconstituted by some kind of medical goop, and it recreates his armor as well, which as we know isn't organic material. Is that goop really that good? Somebody should tell Gwyneth Paltrow about that. Either way, looking back on it, it's a little too convenient. Well, apparently, in earlier versions of the storyboard for the movie, when it was being developed, we were actually supposed to see Frieza's first form completely without his armor, completely in the nip. I guess that camera pan wouldn't have been so iconic if he wasn't wearing his studs from the Namek saga though, when we saw him for the first time in the movie. This was addressed though in the Broly movie when we see him not wearing Saiyan armor and just some Speedos. Without that armor, we can now really see how much Imperfect Cell looks like Frieza, without the spots obviously. In fact, Cell could technically pass for a mutant member of that race, if not for the wings obviously. Number 7. He has more transformations that didn't appear in the anime. Now we know that Cooler has an extra form that Frieza doesn't have, or at least never bothered to use. However, there is one form that the anime has never shed light on, nor has it acknowledged in any way. You see, Japan got its own exclusive transformation for the Emperor. In 1997, Japan had a little event to help promote Dragon Ball GT to the people with its ratings and reviews, taking a big dive at the time. They needed something to create some impact, and what better way to do that than what most Super Sentai things do, and even the Ninja Turtles did back in the 90s when they came out of their shells, have a stage show, which was basically Dragon Ball GT, only live. This wasn't something half-baked or anything, they were really trying hard with this. It had the original cast providing voices for the characters, including Masako Nozawa for Goku, so it did have clout going for it. In this stage show, Frieza and Cell both had these new weird forms. I'll leave a link to the stage show up top if you're curious. I might even do a video about it if you're interested. Frieza's new form was something that he accessed after his final form wasn't enough, and it turns out that his final form wasn't even his final form. Instead, this was his powered up form. I'm sorry, that name is not doing anything for me, but it was used quite easily to overpower Trunks. Needless to say, this was the only time we have seen this thing. It looks like Frieza tried to dress up like a samurai. Well, it's almost as funny as that one time that we got pure gold Frieza, sold around the time of Resurrection F's release. What's that, I hear you say? Well, it's basically Frieza who's turned golden and then absorbed Goku's God Ki. Simple as really. It's just gold on gold on gold on gold. And lastly, number 8, he is the last villain whose main goal was to get the Dragon Balls. Yeah, Frieza was the last time a baddie in the show was solely after the Dragon Balls to enact their mission. Granted, we might have seen other baddies use or be related to the Dragon Balls in some way, but the thing is that our favourite Freezy Pops is the last one who actually actively envisioned our titular magical orbs as his main goal from the start. Most of the other examples stumbled upon them, or the Dragon Balls weren't their main focus, or never figured at all. You might even say that his initial defeat was the end of an era, and as such marks another important milestone in the history of the series. So there you have it, a few interesting tidbits about our favourite Emperor. If you guys are liking the Frieza week so far, do tell us, and then which character we should focus on next. We also hope that not all of these were trivial to you, and we've managed to put some context towards them. Be sure to comment, and I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!